Hi there, and welcome to Central Texas Gardener. I'm Tom Spencer. In drought or deluge, there are remarkable plants that stick with us and carry on their heritage. Today, naturalist and author Matt Turner gives us the backstory to some of them and why they attracted his attention. On tour, we go behind the scenes to see how nursery plants begin.
Beautiful white roots. That one's ready to go to a gallon pot right there. Oh, it's a pretty sight.
That's a celebration every day at Joss Growers, bringing new plants into the world.
We probably grow about 400,000 1-gallons and somewhere in the neighborhood of 120,000 fives. I've always grown plants, and I've always wanted to do this for a living, and I moved to Central Texas where I could do that. I started in my backyard, like a lot of people do, and 15 years ago we moved out here.
Here is 12 acres on an old cotton field in Georgetown, where David Scott started growing plants wholesale to landscapers. Now he has multiple greenhouses and a staff to assist with the demand for native and adapted plants that understand what Texas is all about, even in drought.
As quickly as we could, we started growing native perennials and ornamental grasses.
That was Jim Lidgey's dream job.
I bought my first house in 1988 and wanted to plant a tree. And I bought all the wrong trees, they all died. And I became fairly frustrated with that. And then one Saturday, after looking in my backyard with a bunch of dead plants, I found Central Texas Gardener was on, and I think it was probably Scott Ogden and Jill Noakes and Cheryl McLaughlin, back in 20 years ago. And they were sort of talking about native plants, and I started looking alongside the road, and it was like, well, look at this beautiful little yellow flower. I had no idea what it was, but there it is. Nobody's watering it, nobody's pruning it or spraying it, and it's growing just fine. Why can't I grow that plant in my house? So I started going to local nurseries and looking for native plants and got hooked on growing things.
Jim found a new career at Barton Springs Nursery, where his love of growing kept on growing. That personal germination led him to Joss Growers, where thousands of plants find life through his hands every year.
It usually starts with either a seed, or cutting, or a division. And my favorite is to start things from seed, but it's always not practical to do things that way. Like salvia, greg eyes, and rosemaries, crepe myrtles, those all need to be started by cutting.
He starts some plants from tissue cultures to maintain their true identity.
Yuccas, grasses, annuals, vegetables, lots of herbs. Basil's real easy from seed. Verbenas are easy from seed. Mealy blue sage always comes from seed.
After cleaning the seeds or scraping them from grasses, Jim plants them in common flats until they're rooted.
And keeping it at the appropriate moisture level, which is moist but not soaking wet. It should be still moist in the evening, but the very top of it should just start to be a little bit dry in the evening, so there's not a lot of condensation, and you don't want your little seedlings to have a lot of water on the leaves or on the stems in the evening time. The soil should be wet, but the plant itself, the seedlings should be dry by the time the sun goes down. We'll take them out of those common flats and very gently separate them apart, trying to keep as much root as possible. And after they come out of the seed flats, we put them up into these 36-count flats. It's in a nice, loose, well-draining peat-based mix. And then at this point, where they get those beautiful white roots coming out the bottom and all up and down the sides, it still needs a little more rooting to be ready to go to a gallon, but that is a beautiful sight right there. Nice white roots. And if there's kind of brown roots or anything, that's not a good sign. It usually means you're giving them too much water and the roots are starting to rot. And when they're just like this, it just makes me want to touch them.
Someday, these Yucca rostradas won't be quite as touchable, though David got these mature ones from another grower. Plants from cutting start in a mist house.
And this pink myroporum is probably ready to come off the mist table. Oh yes. It's not fully rooted, but it's got enough white roots to where the cutting can sustain itself with the roots that it has. There'll be time for it to get less water. We'll move it over to the other side where it's warm and humid, and I'll just hand water it and bring it along that way until it's ready to go to a gallon.
And then we bring them over here to harden them up.
In the hardening off greenhouse, the plants adjust to about 75% humidity.
So what we do is we go from 100% humidity and just kind of back it down slowly. Then when we plant them into the finished containers, depending on how quickly we need them to finish, they'll either go directly outside, which will be a slower finish, or they'll go into a greenhouse, one of these finishing greenhouses. And that'll be a faster finish.
Along with timing for market demand, what the plants want determines where they will finish. Sun lovers can go to the great outdoors. Others get protection under a shade cloth. As winter comes, cold tender perennials stay warm to entice adoption in spring. Since David grows year-round, he designed the greenhouses to handle every weather situation.
In the wintertime, this house here is heated just like a lot of houses up north would be. There's a hot water heat in the cement. And so we heat the roots and the heads stay cool. In the summertime, we roll up the sides. We're really blessed with a nice wind out of the south every single day in the summer. And we put some shade on here. We use plastic that has a film on it that blocks the far red light, so that cuts down on the heat buildup.
Even though they only grow what works in Texas, that's a wide range, from architectural foliage to seasonal perennial flowers that attract wildlife.
And that's what I like, and I just like something kind of happening all the time. Not a big happening, just I like a little bit of color here and a little bit of color there, but I like it kind of continuous.
They also have to think ahead, since it can take a year or more for a plant to be ready to sell. And propagating new vines means patient experimenting.
That old theory of mine that you have to kill it 2 or 3 times before you know how to grow it.
The work, the worry, and the long hot days are well worth it when they know a plant's on its way to a new home.
To make somebody happy for doing a simple thing, it's kind of a nice feeling. And to spring life into something, it's not human life, but it's life all the same. To bring forth life is a real kick in the pants.
We are now joined by Matt Turner, who's the author of a remarkable new book about Texas plants. They are the remarkable plants of Texas, and that's the name of the book. And Matt, welcome to Central Texas Gardener. It's a real pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, this is a plants person's book, but with a twist. We were talking about the books that exist on the market about how you learn about native plants of Texas a little while ago. And there was a kind of a deficiency that you noted that you were hungry to fill.
Right. I would look at various books that would help you decide what a plant was and give you its name and where it grows and whatnot, and then it would just stop. And I would always want to know something a little interesting, more human, a tidbit about the plant. Does it only grow near water? Does it have the longest roots? Is it the strongest wood? Do people make tea from it? And this little extra bit that would connect me to it as a person, as a human, was usually missing, because usually there wasn't space for it. And I just thought, well, that's a shame.
Yeah. Well, but you have answered that in this new book.
Right. I decided that, well, I'll just write the book then. And they're really more stories than they are. I didn't set out to write a book about uses, though I'd say 80% of it is man's uses of plants. But it really are just stories. Wherever they led me, I followed them. So sometimes that's ecological, sometimes it's historical, sometimes it's myth and folklore, sometimes it's medicine. And wherever the plant kind of took me, I followed. And I was just amazed at how much stuff there was, just sitting on an ordinary plant that grows at all of our feet, and we all know, all Central Texas gardeners know, and yet did we know these interesting facts about it? Yeah,
and that's what's so fun about the book. Now, you have botany in your roots, so to speak.
Yes, my father is a famous a retired professor of botany at UT, and so I grew up around it. Sometimes at the dinner table I would have to name the families of every plant I ate.
Well, I'm sorry about that.
It was actually pretty good.
Very good. Well, let's start off by talking about some of these plants.
Sure.
Because there are a lot of really cool anecdotes about these things, and I love the section on all the information about how these are used. Texas mountain laurel is a plant that most Central Texas gardeners are familiar with. It's the grape soda plant of spring. Tell us a little bit about what you learned about mountain laurel that we can see in the book.
Sure. Well, those bright red beans, which I'm sure everyone who's been around one knows of those beautiful red beans, have a fascinating history. I mean, they go back 10,000 years in Texas history. There are sites in West Texas where these are found in archaeological sites in great number. And no one quite knows why ancient people were using them. There's a lot of speculation. The predominant theory is they were used for shamanistic purposes, hallucinogens and whatnot, but there are actually no hallucinogens in the seeds that we know of. It's just really poisonous. But poison, if used in a ritual context where you're expecting to see visions and things, would make people think it's a hallucinogen. And a lot of historic Indians, the Caddo, the Comanche, the Tonkawa, the Kiowa, the Wichita, use the seeds for either purging or so as make you throw up, or as again something to make you see visions. And so people worked backwards and thought, well, that must be what ancient man was using them for too. But I mean, Cabeza de Vaca, who landed on our shores, shipwrecked in 1528, he was held as a slave for a couple of years. He finally escaped and became sort of a shaman healer, and he traded extensively in these seeds.
Interesting.
And in fact, the other theory is that they were just used for decoration. They're bright red, gorgeous beads, and
or children play with them too.
Right.
And so and I've heard of stories of during the Depression where children would use them for marbles.
Yes, yes. And there's a hot bean game where you rub it and burn your neighbor's arm with it. But actually, they were traded as far as Montana, the Blackfeet Indians, attached to leggings and bandoliers and stuff, and. So just as a simple export, Texan export, it made its way all the way to Montana.
Okay, so the next time you stop to smell the grape soda, think about the different uses in the long history in association with mankind of Texas mountain laurel. Another plant that you talk about in the book is the little chili piquin or chilpatin.
Right. That is a great pepper, and it's a great plant to grow in your garden. It loves part shade, and most of us in shady Austin are trying to find plants that will work there. That is actually the mother pepper of almost all peppers that we eat today. Anaheim, bell, cayenne, poblano, serrano, that is the mother pepper of all those, DNA evidence suggests. And it's been found back to 9,000 years ago. The wild peppers have been found in Mexico that... and therefore basically the first documented human use of a spice anywhere in the world.
Wow.
So that's an amazing little tidbit, I think. Just
for a plant that's growing in the cracks in the concrete.
Right, because I think we tend to think of it as just, oh, it's just a little, scrappy pepper, when in fact it really is the mother pepper. And it's very hot, and it's wonderful. You can save them and dry them and use them.
They're murderously hot.
Yes, but they dissipate quickly, which in Spanish it's called arrebatado, which means it dissipates quickly. So
it is the preferred chili for menudo. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that, but it makes sense.
There you go.
It also is the state native pepper of Texas. The state pepper is jalapeno, but the state native pepper is the chili piquin or the chiltepin.
Well, they're beautiful little plants too. Just bright colors, very exuberant color. It's just terrific. Let's talk about another one. The horsetail, the equisetum. And I've heard some talk about how this was used during like pioneer days, but this is a plant I always associate with wet soils and a rampant grower.
Yes, it's a great erosion control plant. In fact, there is a story of a gentleman in Bandera County who had a stream bed that was eroding, and he planted just one plant, and within 3 years that it was 100 square yards it had taken over.
Oh my goodness.
It has vast underground roots that hold the soil in place. Amazing thing about this plant, it is a living fossil. If any genus of plants deserves that moniker, it is a horsetail. They go back 350 million years. That's before the continent split up. That's before dinosaurs. That's before the mass extinctions.
350 million.
It's ancient. And at those time, their ancestors were 60-foot tall trees. And they would look very similar to the horsetail that you know from ponds.
Tree size.
Right, with bases 2 feet across. It's one of the only known plant that requires silicon to grow. And in fact, little silicon tubercles form on its surface, which are scratchy. And that's why it's called scouring rush. And many people the world over have used it as a polishing agent and sort of as a sandpaper substitute, and it's very good for that purpose.
I see it used in a lot now of modern gardens who want very simple shapes, and the geometry of this plant, this little pencil-like growth is perfect for that.
Yes, I think in a lot of modern gardens it's being used more and more because it's just kind of cool.
It is a cool plant,
right?
And interesting history. And again, thinking of a tree-sized one makes it all that much more interesting.
Right. Yeah. And dragonflies are ancient too, and when one lands on one, I always think, and they love perching on those, and I always think of, wow, it's just like time stopped and you're getting a little vision back.
That's perfect.
To 350 million years ago.
One of my favorite plants, I spent some time in East Texas, and I always think that the big thicket got its name because of Yopon holly. Because the Yopon gets so thick there, you need a machete to get through the woods. But there's a lot of lore associated with Yopon as well, right?
Well, the fascinating thing about Yopon, and this seems to be very hidden from just common knowledge, is it is a fantastic tea. It is a great native tea. It's one of the only plants in Texas that contains caffeine, 0.27% caffeine in the dried leaves. And Yopon grows all the way to Virginia and North Carolina. And every Indian tribe between here and there drank a tea from it, a naturally caffeinated tea. And all the early pioneers, all the Spanish, every explorer that came into this region drank the tea too. Mary Austin Holly, the cousin to Stephen F. Holly, talks about how it was a common tea and a very good one. And what fascinates me is it just vanished. I mean, no one seems to know this. We kind of know you can make tea out of horse mint, but no one talks about Yopon. And it's close. The parallel story, which I love to tell with this, is yerba mate, same genus, growing in South America, also used by the Indians. All the colonials come in and drink that. It becomes a national drink of Argentina.
Right. Well, and there also the Yopon was used as a purgative as well. The berries, right?
No, actually, the tea was too, but it's not the tea that's making you purge. It's drinking 3 to 6 gallons of piping hot tea on an empty stomach, and that's why it gets the unfortunate name of vomitoria.
Yeah. Well, that is a little unfortunate for a botanical name, but we have to wrap it up there. But I do want to recommend the book to our audience at home. This is, if you enjoy these stories, that's what the book is about, connecting human stories to the plants, and I think you'll find it fascinating. Matt Turner, thank you very much for being our guest on Central Texas Gardener. And again, the book is Remarkable Plants of Texas on UT Press, correct?
That's right.
All right. Thanks so much for being our guest. And coming up next, it's our friend Skip Richter.
Hello and welcome to Down to Earth. This week's question is, how do I grow great tomatoes? You know, the tomato is the queen of the garden. I mean, if you don't garden growing any other vegetable, you probably grow tomatoes. It seems to be an American obsession. And how do we get good ones? A lot of people have not tried gardening before. Perhaps the economy or other factors have renewed your interest in gardening, and you'd like to know, how do I have success with tomatoes? Maybe you've tried them before and haven't done so well. Well, it's really simple. First of all, they need to be in full sun, at least 6 hours of sun, but as much as you can give them. In shade, you're just not going to have productive plants, and the fruit isn't going to be as tasty either. They need to be in good soil. That's soil that has some compost mixed in, that drains well, but that has plenty of nutrients, because they do want to be fed along as they go. And finally, you want to grow them as fast as you can. We get hot weather here soon, so if your tomatoes take a long time to start producing, then you're not going to have much production. They'll shut down before they really get going well. So choose early producing varieties, plant them as early as you can, and continue to water and fertilize them and get them to grow as fast as you can. Those are all important steps. Now, of course, there's more to tomatoes, like pest and disease control and so on, but if you'll start with those 3 key things, that's good. If you want to grow them in containers, remember that soil, the second of the 3 important things. They need plenty of soil, so at least a 5-gallon container. Larger is even better, and that way you don't have to water them so well, and you'll need to fertilize a little extra in containers because their roots are confined. They just don't have the bank account of soil to draw on. This week's featured plant is Texas Betony, a West Texas native. It makes a good ground cover, spreads out slowly over a large area. It has beautiful, kind of an off gray green color to the foliage that I think is quite attractive, and then beautiful red blossoms too. It blooms very well in the spring and continues to bloom on through the season quite well. The blooms, being red and tubular, as you might expect, are attractive to hummingbirds. So it has the extra plus of attracting those to your garden. It's extremely tough. A little bit of water will keep it looking great. If it goes a little dry, it tends to bounce back. You can plant it in full sun, or you can plant it in shade where it needs even less water and still does quite well. Consider Texas Betony in your garden this year. Out in the garden, it's time to plant all kinds of warm season plants. The annual and perennial flowers need to go in now. Things that like warm weather. Zinnias are a good example that everyone enjoys growing, as well as sunflowers and others. In the vegetable garden, many of our warm season crops are really growing fast. Tomatoes and probably peppers too, if you've already got them in your garden, are growing quite well by now. It's warmed up a lot. If you haven't planted them yet, you better hurry up and do so. Beans and eggplant, melons, corn, cucumbers, squash, Swiss chard, many other things. So continue to take care of your garden. Make sure you mulch the beds well, and they'll do well. For more plant tips or to contact the Extension office in your county, visit klru.org/CTG.
Thanks, Skip. Now let's check in with John Dromgoole for Backyard Basics.
Hello gardening friends, welcome to Backyard Basics. A lot of new gardeners are out there. Thousands and thousands of people are gardening for the first time, and they're growing vegetables, that's for sure, but a lot of them are putting in their flower beds. And many of us have to deal with a heavy clay soil. You know, they make bricks out of it or clay pots out of it. It's really hard to dig in. And when it's wet, when you walk across it, you come out a little bit taller on the other side. You know, that clay soil right there. But you can fix it, and you can garden in that spot without introducing some more soil. So today I'm going to show you a few of the soil amendments that I like to use to help open up that soil, bring some life to it, and get it to drain well, and you can grow anything out there at that point. Some of the things that I like to use, this is a little bit of a pea gravel right here, a little bit smaller than a pea gravel, but look at that. That's a beautiful little product. It's got a lot of texture to it, and that's what you're going to need. And you would use a generous amount of it when you're in the garden out there. Not just a little bit, but at least 3 inches of this on top of the bed, and then you try to work it in about 8 or 10 inches, but put a generous amount in there. That's very, very important. So this is a very good little product, not impossible to find, and I like it a lot. It really does open up the soil. Another one that is available quite a bit is this decomposed granite sand. Now it's pretty good. I think that I would maybe screen it a little bit, but it has a lot of texture in there. It has a lot of small stones, and once again, about a 3-inch layer on top of the garden bed, and working it in very, very nicely is important, and that means down to another 8 or 10 inches. So a generous amount of this, and this one brings minerals in too, so it's a real neat little product, and it's locally available. You know, that's important when we're looking for sustainable gardens. We're looking for products that come from our immediate area, and so this granite sand does. You've probably seen this on the paths here and there. It can compact down, so you want to put it very well mixed into your soil. This is a way to fix that heavy clay soil. Very nice product, and a lot of people use this one because it's widely available. Another thing that you're going to need to add whenever you're opening the soil up is some good compost. This is a dairy compost right here. The dairy compost, it seems to be the one that lasts the longest in the soil. All of the proteins have been removed by the cattle, and so it doesn't break down so easily anymore. I mean cows. And so this is a good little product. It'll have some nutrients in it, some life in it. We need that life in the soil. That's a very, very important thing. That's one of the goals in repairing that heavy clay soil, is to bring a lot of life to it, because the microorganisms that are in there will secrete a glue-like substance, and they live in the air. They really need some important air in there. They're not anaerobic organisms, and so you really need to open it up. And that glue-like substance that they excrete binds the particles of clay together into a really nice tilth. So this is an important addition to this whole thing. This right here is expanded shale. Texas A&M did a lot of research, and the Arboretum up in Dallas. There are a lot of folks using this right here. It's a Texas product. It's shale. It's a little over 65 million years old. It's been around here a long time and does not break down. This is the stuff that's been sitting around here for the past 65 million. At the end of the dinosaur age, this stuff was deposited in the soil when Texas was a huge lake. And so this is expanded shale. And so this works very, very well and stays there forever. It's not going to go anywhere. The next million years that you're gardening in that spot, it's going to drain very, very well. This is known as expanded shale. And it's really porous. It really is nice and open. So one of the other characteristics of this is you can use it in a sandy soil. So in a heavy clay soil, it'll provide the drainage, and in a sandy soil, it will hold moisture. It's very, very porous. I understand that it's nearly 38% of the weight of each stone here in moisture. Really nice way to do that. Expanded shale. This is probably, except for the compost, these two things would be my best choices, especially in some of those sandy soils. It's important to feed this kind of a soil. Bringing that life around there means everything. And there are many soil activators on the market, and that's what soil activators do. They feed the microorganisms that are in the soil, and that'll open it up, and you'll have a beautiful garden after you do this. For Backyard Basics, I'm John Dromgoole. I'll see you next time.
Check out klru.org/CTG for more tips, online video, and our weekly blog. Next week, see how to make an impact with variegated plants. Until then, I'll see you in the garden. Visit klru.org/CTG to learn more about today's program, upcoming events, and to sign up for our electronic newsletter. Check out John's how-to tips and visit Trish's Corner for ideas inside and out. Get growing at klru.org/CTG.